Welcome to the Stephen Rotsart podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Rotsart, and I'm excited to share and bring you value of tips and tricks in the real estate industry, and especially have guests on that have impacted my life and have brought me to another level, not only in my business, but also in the real estate industry. I'm excited to share these guests with you. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am so blessed because this man has completely impacted and changed my life forever, more than he will probably ever know, and more than I can even show him the gratitude for. But I'm truly blessed today to have Neel Dinghra on my podcast. Welcome to the show, Neel. Thanks, man.
Thanks for being here, man. You made the trip up to Reno?
I did, just to hang out with the guru himself. Truly what I said is so much more than I can even put into words of how you've impacted my life. But what I really want to get into is a little bit of probably where I was and probably where most of our audience might be. You sit in a position of being in your own way. And one of the things that you helped me, and I showed up here, I met you in San Diego. It was kind of just a little meet and greet, nothing real formal. You invited me to an event that you hosted, and you call it Content Day. And you helped me get out of my own head and get out of my own way to just feel comfortable about doing it.
Yes.
Explain kind of that process and probably what you see on a regular basis with these people that you meet in our industry and not only in real estate, but in mortgage as well.
First, before we even get started, dude, thanks for being here and being a member of the community. We bring this up on our calls all the time, but like you're one of the OGs of the group, and it's cool to see you even people look to you as a leader within the group. And it's cool to see that happen just on its own. Yeah, there's so many people out there who are kind of stuck in inaction, have ideas. And I was there too. Like just you have all these ideas on what you want to do to innovate in your business or invest or market yourself, and you just don't do it for whatever reason. You just like life gets in the way. And unfortunately, a decade will go by like that, and just the time's going to go by anyways. So it's like at some point something clicks and you're like, dude, I'm going to do something. And for me, it might have been a piece of content that I saw. Maybe it's content I've been seeing, and then for some reason one day it just clicked. Could be an event you go to. Like I'm a big fan of going to live events and hearing and learning from people, and maybe something clicks there while you're in that room with those like-minded people. Or it could be, just a connection that you had, and you finally said, fuck it, I'm going to do something. So whatever it is, it's, that's the starting point. So that started for me, changed my whole business and my whole thing. And then I started to get a lot of people within the industry, kind of asking me the same questions of like, hey, how did you do this? Or how do I get to where you're at? Or how do I do, I love what you're doing in the marketing space. How can I do the same thing? And just simple questions. So I started to do these little meetups and marketing events.
Right.
And then it transitioned into more of like, okay, well, let's bring people out and teach them, the ones who are super serious about this thing. Then that transitioned into more things from there. But it started from a place of like, look, I've gone from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm the biggest expert or the biggest influencer in the whole game, whatever. But I've definitely had a transition and learned a ton of stuff along the way. Spent a lot of money along the way, made a lot of mistakes, did some good stuff along the way. Definitely helping people go from that same trajectory or that same path, A to B, is something I can help you with. We can get there faster because instead of doing the 30 things that I did, we can just do the 3 that actually worked.
Right. And I think that was kind of one of the big issues I had, is that I had so many things impacting, especially just in my head, that I just needed to get out of that. And you were so instrumental in just breaking it down so simple. Just get over it. Yeah. Because no one likes to look at themselves, especially in the camera or what have you. It's a difficult thing to overcome and just move on from that. So you have now created what I would call one of the most intense, tightly knit communities in the United States that wants everybody to succeed. And you lead by example because you have given and given and given everything that you can to make sure people succeed. And now you're watching, I'm going to call it your own troops, Neel's troops. Are doing the exact same thing. Did you ever imagine it to be that way?
No, I just thought, hey, I'm going to put on this one thing. I'm going to hope people show up to it, and then I hope they find value from it. And we would put the same effort into a 20-person meetup as we did a 800-person event in Vegas this summer, or a workshop where we're flying people in from all over the country, right? So I was just trying to make the thing that's right in front of me the most valuable thing for the people coming to it. And then from there, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then now, as you said, it's like a movement. We got people from all around the country. But the thing that's super important, hey, when you're teaching these people, there's like we talked about today earlier off camera of like, hey, there's a lot of people in the coaching space, in the mentorship space, that are just doing it for the money. Like you
Right.
can tell. There's a real need for actual thought leaders who really care. This was interesting. This came up at a Forward event in Vegas with Gary Vee. He was on stage. And I asked him, we were on doing a panel discussion, and I asked Gary, I said, hey, Gary, all these things that you launch, they all seem to do really well. Like your NFTs project blew up. You'd start a wine company. 18 months later, it's acquired by a conglomerate. Then you started this. Then you started a sports agency. Then you started this thing.
They all succeeded.
Everything's succeeding. I'm like, why is that? Is it you got the Midas touch, or what's the deal? Like, Gary? And he goes, it's because I don't need the money. And I was like, people didn't think anything of the answer. But then he elaborated, like, it's like in the very beginning, if you go back to his original thing, he lived with his family, saved up all his money. He didn't need the money, and that allowed him to invest in his early stage investments, which blew up and blah, blah.
Right.
And then the next thing and next thing and next thing. And so there's so many people who are doing things just for the money, and you could tell. But if you're someone like who's already having success in business and now you're teaching people, well, your success doesn't come from the teaching. It came from the actual business that you're doing. So that's why I love being probably one of the rarer people in the coaching space who's actually in the game with the students. Hey, I just tried this. It worked really well. I messed up on 7 things, but 2 of them worked really well. Why don't I just teach you guys what I just did?
Right.
Oh, and here's a copy of what I just did. And here's a copy of my result that I got. And we just did this. So you know it's going to work. It's not old shit. So I think people really appreciate the fact that, you know, it's not just theory, it's actual practice. And you're really doing the things that you're saying.
Well, and you do it from such a perspective because you really come from the heart. You're very genuine in what you do. You're giving. But at the same time, you are testing. You are A/B testing yourself. You can use yourself as an example. And the proof, you have that proof. And if you don't follow Neel Dinghra goes by Neel Home on Instagram. You have basically blown up your social media, which went from, I'm going to say 0 because you reinvented yourself, all the way to where you're at today with a community, everything behind you for things that you do to make sure that not only you're succeeding, social and your coaching is not really your go-to business. We'll get into that a little bit, but it's more of you have the social proof to go ahead and provide the analysis for all your other students, for all the other individuals that are using you as an example.
Well, you think about this. Hey, if I'm going to learn from someone who's doing social media, well, I would hope they'd be good at social media.
Right.
Like I'm going to learn from an investor. Well, I hope he has a lot of investing experience and a success with investing. It's crazy how like sometimes you go reach out to vendors and they don't even have the social proof or the proof of concept for what they're selling. You know what I mean? So I look for the same things when I'm trying to reach out to someone for help. Have they done the thing that I'm looking to do? And have they done it well? And is there some way I can get their help? And so that's just the shortcut to life. Like, it's like, look at people who are at where you'd like to be in some aspect of their business or life. Can they help you get there faster? What's the shortcut? That's the shortcut. Everyone wants the secret pill or the shortcut. That is the shortcut. The one shortcut I have found that actually works, reaching out to people who have done the thing that you're looking to do and just get their help. Now, some of them, there is no help available. Like you can't reach them. And then with other people, there is products and services that they offer where you can do that. So that's what we do on the, on the coaching and the teaching side. And it's been great. Like, because like you said, I actually care about what I'm doing, and then also are people finding success with the stuff that you're teaching.
But this all originated because you found a gap in your own industry.
Correct, yeah.
And what was amazing, and if you go back into some of your early videos, and you're still maintaining that today, where you are just educating the population.
Yeah.
You're educating the consumer. Maybe you're educating agents and mortgage agents as well, but really you're educating the consumer consistently and constantly with infotainment so that they can make their lives better. And where did you see that and grasp that concept to where that was a need, that was a calling, let's put it that way?
Yeah, I think it's the people who, all the stuff that you haven't been taught in school or growing up, or maybe you've been taught the exact wrong thing.
Right.
And that's true for so many people, and especially in this country. Like, you just don't get that information. I'm sure it's the same across the world, but from my experience, a lot of the knowledge is not there. It's not taught, it's not given. So you have to look to somewhere else to get it. Books, videos, content, even in some aspects, they don't even teach it in college.
Right.
So it's like, how do we learn the real game of money and investing? And nobody taught us about real estate, or even how to buy real estate, or if it's even for for you. Like it seems like a lot of these things I've noticed this, people are super good at excluding themselves from everything. They're like,
it's a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, you're like, nah, that's not for me. That's somebody else doing that. Or yeah, easy for them to say they probably had some hookup or connection. I can't do that. So everyone's just all day long watching shit or hearing about stuff and they're like, I can't do that. So it's our job, if you are someone who's done it before and can help, it's actually an obligation of ours you are qualified to do this. Here's how. It's not that hard. Let me break it down for you. It's actually pretty simple. When I knew I was onto something is when I saw the content that was breaking it down in the simplest form for like a fourth grader reading level that they could understand it. Those were the pieces that reached the most people. It was the simplest stuff. It wasn't the really complex, nerdy stuff that I'm into. It was like more, hey, how do you even get started with this stuff?
Right.
And so that's when I was like, oh man, there's a real need for this. And the problem is people make that content and nobody watches it. So then you think nobody's interested. It's not that they're not interested. It's just you didn't do it in the right way. So that's when I got into the whole tactics of like, okay, how do we deliver content so people actually watch it? Because if you put out the video and nobody watches it, then it's kind of, limited impact. So in the beginning I was doing it, very few people watching it. Then I figured out along the way how to get more people to actually engage with the content. Two things happen. One is you figure out all the kind of tricks of the trade.
Right.
The other part is you know about this, you get better on camera. In the beginning, you're super stiff, sound robotic, you're not being yourself. You're worried, hey, what are these people going to think? Do they think this is stupid? Is anybody going to watch it? And you're just worried constantly. And then eventually something clicks and you're like, I'm just going to be myself. I know the material, I'm just going to deliver it. And then now you're delivering it very smooth, comfortable. So those two things combine, the actual topics, your knowledge of them, and then also your ability to communicate. When those two come together, then now all of a sudden it's like off to the races.
Yeah, it's off to the races.
And then now you're like really good on camera. So now it's like, oh shit, I'm helping a lot of people. And what's cool, it sounds kind of cheesy, but you'll get these messages, and these messages mean a lot to me. Is like, hey, dude, I bought my first place because of you. One guy messaged me, he's like, I quit my job because it sucked and I had no opportunity for advancement. I wasn't learning anything and I ended up getting into something else and I'm stoked now. Like I'm totally changed. And
That's
now I'm
awesome.
going to buy my next play. I'm going to buy this. And I'm also going to invest in stocks. I wasn't thinking about it, but now I am. So you're actually able to move people forward.
Right.
Without you, they may not have done that stuff. So that's real change.
And I think that's the coolest thing about our industry because, obviously I follow my father who had been in the industry and everybody says, well, why are you in residential real estate? And I said, well, because it's the most rewarding because I've never met a person in the commercial space that named a building after their broker, but I have met the family that named their child after my dad because he helped him buy their first house, and so there's things like that we really have the ability in our industry to impact not only someone's family, but also their personal wealth and how that all kind of comes about.
And this is why I love real estate from a perspective of like leverage.
Right.
And people think of debt and leverage as bad. Let's just say I come to you and I'm like, look, I've got $15,000. It's a lot of money, but it's not life-changing money.
Right.
We have the ability in real estate to change lives with that $15,000 because of leverage. It is the one place, because of government action and because of the way the markets are set up here in this country, where you can get extreme leverage very cheap. And so that $15,000 can turn into $400,000, $500,000 worth of real estate. And the bank's going to give you all the rest of the money. What other investment can you make that trade? Yeah, it's like if I go in to buy, I'm like, hey, bank, I'd like to buy $500,000 worth of B of A stock.
Right.
I'm going to put up $15K and you give me the rest. They'll be like, get the fuck out of here. Who are you, right? Like, but in real estate, not only do they encourage that, they're actually putting the work, like it doesn't just exist, they're actually pushing it. They're like, hey man, we need more people. We want to expand home ownership. And so it's really cool in that one spot, you have the ability to really change somebody's whole life, like their whole trajectory of their wealth, their family tree, all that stuff in just one simple investment that could lead to more. And many times it does. You've seen it happen so many times where someone started with one property, then bought more, or they started with that starter home, they sold that, upgraded, and then eventually 10 years later, they're in their absolute dream property, which wouldn't have been possible if they didn't keep trading up.
Correct.
So there's so much change that comes from that first initial investment, and it's not possible with any other type of investment other than real estate.
And this, and for those of you that don't know, Neel is a very successful mortgage broker. You have umpteen years of experience and have gone from 0 to $1 million in that standpoint of your business, which gives you the ability to kind of talk about and bring all that knowledge to the table. Where are we at right now and where are we headed, and why is real estate such an opportunistic investment? And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but where are we headed and where do you see the avenues of great investments coming up in the near future?
So it's a big shift that's happened. We're in the middle of it as we record this, right? Real estate just had probably a decade run. I mean, every year was better than the last. And for the first time in 10 years or more, you're starting to see it just flatten out. and in some cases pull back a little bit. That hasn't happened since over 10 years.
But not unusual.
Not unusual, because nothing can go up in a straight line. You look at a stock, just pull up the chart of any of the highest quality companies in the world and look at their chart. It moves from the lower left to the upper right over time. But along the way, there's pullbacks.
Right.
And so this is normal. For some reason in real estate, people think it's crazy, but if you zoom out, it's normal for things to have ebb and flow. It can't just keep going up straight line. The thing that people get really scared about is which is a once in a generation event, once in a lifetime event that you'll see of a housing crash, which happened in 2008. So that affects people still to this day. 14 years later, people are still looking for the same thing to happen again. It's like a form of PTSD.
But they're also constantly reminded, because the media does nothing except make them remember that 2008 cycle that really impacted a lot of lives.
So you have to look at what caused that. Are those conditions present? Is the market anywhere like it is then? And it's not. And so people are just looking for that to happen again because it happened before. And like you said, the media loves to take advantage of people's fears. Mm-hmm. Because that's what drives attention, right? People don't understand this. Whenever there's a pullback in the market or, things are going down, the people who are negative finally get their day to bask in the sun.
Right.
So they've been negative for 10 years.
For 10 years straight.
And they've been wrong at all points along the way. They've actually cost you money. And now they're finally their day in the sun and they have the mic.
Right.
And those voices are the loudest during a pullback. They'll be super loud telling you about all these things that are going to happen, and they have your full attention. Just think about it right now. If I said there's going to be a massive crash, you guys are not prepared for this. I mean, you got to listen to this. Everyone's eyebrows go up. They're
tuned in.
Yeah. Versus if I'm like, hey, look, actually it's not that bad. Take a step back, calm down, remove emotion. There's some things that are different about this market. There's going to be opportunity. Yeah, some people will listen, but they're way more interested in the negative scenario today. So that's why the news is leaning that way. They're just getting more clicks. That's their business's attention. So it's up to us to be like, okay, well, let's take a step back. What are the real opportunities? Is the market going to crash like it did in 2008? No, it doesn't. It's not even close to the same type of market. Is there a shortage of homes or is there an excess of homes? It's just simple market, supply, demand.
Supply and demand.
Yeah. Do we have too many homes or do we have too few homes? Well, back then we had too many.
Right.
Today we have too few compared to the population and the number of households being formed, right? So let's just look at those two things simple. The conditions are strong for housing as far as financing, all those things that led to a crash aren't present today. And there's a shortage of homes. Now, so what is going to drive the actual prices of homes and whether they come down or go up? It's demand, right? Because the supply is kind of tight.
Right.
There's not a huge glut of homes on the market. There's an ebb and flow of demand, meaning how many people are interested. We just saw in 21, because money was so cheap, a ridiculous amount of demand.
Correct.
Just
with
people
low supply levels.
Yeah, tripping over themselves. It's like a freaking Black Friday sale. Everybody wants to get in, right? You got all these multiple offers. And then now you see the cost of money went up. Also, people's sentiment, what they felt changed because of the media. And now you see that demand go down a lot. The supply issue is still there. The long-term quality of real estate is still there. So it's just the demand just changed. So now what can you do? You can take advantage of that and get a better deal on a house. And based on all the research I've done, the cost of money will come down with inflation. And this is just a fact. It's not up for debate. Like when inflation spiked, interest rates spiked for mortgages. As we saw inflation just start to cool off about a month ago, interest rates cooled off a little bit, right? It just moves directly with it. If you look at the chart, it's absolutely locked in, correlated. It's not about when the Fed raises short-term rates.
They're
it's
following
about
each other.
Inflation, right? So if inflation comes down and the government and the freaking Fed get their shit together and inflation cools off, you'll see these rates cool off. So you'll have an opportunity to refinance that debt in the future.
And when you say opportunity, are you seeing opportunity from an investor perspective, first-time home buyer, trade-up buyer, all the above?
I think anybody. So it's like, what's your goal with real estate? It's to buy my first house. Today, you can get a property for $100K less at an entry-level price point than you would have paid a year ago. $100,000. That's a big difference. Because last year, you would have had to pay way more because the money was cheap. And like I said, people were tripping over themselves. Demand was ridiculous.
Correct.
So now you get it for $100K cheaper. That's a great opportunity. What's the downside of that? Well, the money's more expensive. I just talked about, hey, that's going to change in the future. So there, you can kind of address that issue. Second part is, like, what if you want to buy a rental property? Well, we got to make sure the numbers make sense from a cash flow perspective, all that stuff. And then the other part is, okay, now what if you want to move up? At the higher end price points, you know this.
Yeah.
They pull back even more.
Even more than the lower end. Yeah.
Yeah. Like on a percentage basis, you'll see the prices come down even more. No matter what your goal is, it obviously would help you to get a better deal on a property. And so I think of times, it happens all the time. You look back and you're like, man, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have took advantage of 2% rates and lock in debt against inflation. Cool. Hopefully you took advantage of that. Or now, remember when demand collapsed because rates had the fastest run up in the history of interest rates.
That's right.
And it caused demand to go away. And then now you could have got a $100K discount on a house, or let's say I've seen $1 million discount on a $3 million home.
Yep.
Because it was overpriced and now they need to get out of it. When else could you find that? Hopefully you took advantage of that. These opportunities always happen and then people are just watching them go by. Like, think about the stock market.
Same thing.
Same shit.
So let me ask you this. Are you actively looking in this marketplace because you do think that there are opportunities?
Yeah. So you talked about I'm in the mortgage industry. That's how I talk a lot about this stuff because I work with real estate and mortgage every day. But then also me personally, we own a bunch of rental properties and we're looking at properties right now. I'm in the process of putting contracts together today to buy rental property because the industry's asleep. The buyers are asleep during the winter.
Right.
It's the week of Christmas as we're recording this. There's nobody to compete with. I think the key is going to be, and this will be the opportunity for people in the next few months, is finding motivated sellers. And you talk about this on the listing side. You don't want to be taking advantage of your client, but you do have clients who need to sell more than others.
Correct.
Because they're going through a divorce, because they're relocating and they need to get out, because they're in contract on a new home and they need the money from this home to close on that home. And so it doesn't mean that, hey, we're going to rip these people off. It just means that some people have a greater motivation to sell at this moment than others.
That's right.
There's a guy who says, you know what, I'm going to test the market and list the house, and I don't care if it doesn't sell for my price, I'm not selling the house. That is not a motivated seller. You're probably not getting anywhere with that dude, right? But there's somebody else who's like, look, I'm moving to Phoenix and I need to sell my home in San Diego and I got to get out. We're moving. He's probably willing to come to the table.
Negotiate. Yeah, and he wants to negotiate. And I do believe that there's a lot more of those opportunities. And I think if you're an agent listening to this podcast, you got to know that a guy like Neel is looking to buy and don't go to sleep and not work right now. Because as an agent, we should be working because there's opportunities for buyers. There's opportunities for sellers that are in situations that do need to sell. And I think that this is just such an opportunistic time. I've been in license over 25 years at this point. I haven't seen something like this in about a decade, give or take. I do believe that there's opportunities across everybody across the board for home buyers, home sellers, and investors.
And you have to think about this. Right now, we talked about how the media scares people. We also talked about how money went more expensive. We also talked about, hey, maybe the market, we're not so certain on the economy. We've had stock market down 20% this year. There's layoffs at certain companies. So it's not all roses out there. It's a tough economy, right? So what do people do when there's all these moving parts? You just kind of go and just cringe down and don't do shit.
You get in the fetal position and hang out and make sure that you feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, or just don't do anything. That's what everyone is pulled to, is a state of inaction. You're not going to mess anything up if you don't do anything. So you don't want to take any chances. You don't want to take any risk. Okay, so that's the default state. So that's why you're also seeing demand is way down. It's not because people don't believe in real estate or don't want to buy it. It's just they're scared. They don't know what's going to happen. So they'd just rather not do anything. And then so many of our people in real estate, our colleagues, I should say, they're just waiting for someone to raise their hand and say, I'd like to buy real estate. Well, the market's different today. You can have less people raising their hand because of this uncertainty.
Right.
Their hands are freaking clutched in their pockets.
In their pocket.
Or holding their ass, whatever it is, right? So you're not going to get a bunch of people raise their hand like they did a year ago. So it's up to us to say, hey, there's an opportunity. Here's why you should raise your hand. And here's how I'm going to help you. And don't worry because of these factors.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm doing the same shit myself. So it's good for my family. It's good for your family. So talk about that. Now all of a sudden you see a couple people like, hey man, I'm going to put my hand up a little bit. I'd like to talk.
Yeah.
And then that conversation is going to lead to, and more people are going to buy. So I think from an agent perspective, it's up to us to put the information out there and actually start looking at these deals. Like if you're someone who's interested in real estate as an investment, you should be looking at property right now. There's deals out there that I haven't seen in a long time. And so you should be looking at this stuff. You should be looking at all the different creative opportunities that there are to get into deals and to finance those deals. We talk about buy downs. There's all these like nerdy things we could get into, but the point is there's ways to bring down your payment. There's ways to get the price lower than you've ever seen in a while. And it's still a good investment for long term. You may be in for next couple of years of a little choppiness, but when you zoom out, it's going to be that same chart that you'll see from lower left to the upper right.
It's always going to keep going
Same
up.
chart.
Real estate has always been a gentle appreciating asset constantly.
Is it always up? Every year, no. There's going to be a year where it's down slightly. That's okay.
Yeah.
And and then use that as your chance. So use these pullbacks as a chance to get in. But I think from an agent perspective, there's way too many people who are just waiting. Nobody's going to call you, bro. Like you need to go out and talk to people. Like let them know. And by the way, it's your job to do that. That's why you're freaking in this business.
Well, that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
We're here to get the information out there and to provide value and service to our clients. There's just a lack of knowledge across the industry. And I don't think we as agents, because being a real estate agent, we don't do a good job of stepping up and providing all that information to educate home buyers and home sellers of the opportunities that exist.
Well,
in our
because you get
marketplace.
busy with the deal, and we all know how much time it takes with each client.
Yeah.
And it's this roller coaster, and you're putting out fires, and you're fixing this, and you're trying to negotiate this repair. You're coordinating with this buyer or seller, and dealing with the other people within the industry is not always easy. So there's all these moving parts, and then what happens is the communication just stops. You know, people stop putting out. So that's one of the things we talked about in the beginning episode was like, hey, why do we need to do content? So this is exactly why. And this is probably the time when there's never been a greater need to do the content, because we need to help educate these people and let them know what are the opportunities, because if they don't get it from us, they're just going to get this negative clickbait story from CNBC. And by the way, the strategist at CNBC, I forget her name, she's been wrong on housing every year.
Every single year.
Yeah. But it's where the public is getting the information.
Right.
Unless we speak up and then you start putting out the real information. And so is it all roses? No, but there's opportunities within all this that you can take advantage of. And here's an example of one. Here's what my clients are doing. If you're interested in doing the same thing, reach out, let's have a conversation. So if you do that more often, we're gonna help more people. And then in 5 years from now, those people are gonna be like these people who named their house after your father.
That's right.
They'd be like, dude, thank you so much for reaching out to me during that kind of weird period in 2022. Or 2023. If you probably didn't reach out to us, we wouldn't be in this house, or we wouldn't be in the next house because of the first one that we bought in 2023. Whatever it is, you never know. And there's so many other benefits, not just about the house going up. It's like, what does living in that community with the stability of owning your own home do for your family? Just from a peace of mind standpoint.
Right.
Maybe from the schools your kids go to. Maybe from the fact that now, because of that, you end up doing other things with your career because of that, because of owning that. You know, there's all kinds of shit that happens that is not directly just the money. You know what I mean?
Well, there is nothing like home. And I really appreciate your time, your patience, and all the information that you consistently not only provide me and my colleagues in the industry, but being part of your academy and being part of your group. You really lead from another level and provide so much value. And I appreciate you giving from the heart consistently. So
thanks for doing this.
No, I appreciate you taking the time. If you need to follow Neel, look him up. I'll have his information down below, but at Neel Home on Instagram. Fantastic follow, incredible person. Neel, man, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.